American people. Stop the killing, stop the poisoning of the American people. It's as simple as that. I mean, how long have drug cartels waged war on our communities, on our families, on our young people, on our streets? Violent cartels that made their way easily across the southern border under Joe Biden and his disastrous policy. So President Trump's locking the border down. He's done that, and we're going to continue to do that.
And Higseth says now we go on offense.
To make sure these cartels can't be funded, that they can't sustain what they're doing. And it doesn't mean we're fighting every cartel everywhere endlessly. That's not what we're doing. We're not trading one endless fight for another endless fight. It's the precise application of American power to send very clear signals that narco-terrorism will not be tolerated in our hemisphere. And if you want to traffic drugs that are headed for the United States, we're not doing it with kid gloves anymore.
I'm Chad Groening.
A federal judge recently ruling the families of victims from the 9/11 terrorist attacks can go ahead with a civil lawsuit against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for allegedly aiding and supporting the al-Qaeda hijackers. Terry Strada, the national chair of 9/11 Families United, praising the judge for the ruling.
A federal judge spent a full year to look at all the evidence, and that judge rejected 24 years of Saudi Arabia's denying and lying.
A new survey on Americans finds that the more they read the Bible, the more likely they are to have a stronger sense of identity. Bronson Woodruff has more.
The new findings are from the American Bible Society. It released Chapter 6 of its State of the Bible USA 2025 report. It found that, quote, identity levels are strong among people who practice religion and not just Christianity. That quote taken from John Plake, State of the Bible Editor-in-Chief, per the Christian Post. 52% of respondents who are part of a different religion than Christianity report a strong sense of identity. It found that practicing Christians have the strongest sense of identity overall, with 64% of them having a strong one. Dr. Alex McFarland of Exploring the Word shared his thoughts with AFN.
One of the real keys to emotional stability and resilience and just the fortitude to face each day with confidence and joy, one of the keys to this is to have a sense of self and to know who we are and to have a realistic vision of our life and our purpose.
He said one might expect this result, that more time in God's Word brings these positive outcomes.
To get God's word on this and what God says in the Bible, His promises, His reassurances, that makes for a healthy state of mind. It really does.
He said this is just one more reason of many why we should daily be in the Word, why we should draw our conclusions about life and our hope for the future from the promises of God's Word. McFarland explained that when you know the Lord, when you're trusting in and standing on His Word, then we have confidence.
And there's a sign that inflation is cooling.
The Producer Price Index, prices at the wholesale level, declined 0.1% in August. It also declined 0.1% for the core PPI, excluding food and energy. Ginny Coselda, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us today on the program. Walker Wildmon here on this edition of the show. And I'm embarrassed to admit this, but clearly not embarrassed enough to not admit it. And that is, I just confessed to Bobby that for the first time ever, I was looking for my phone as I was on the phone.
It don't get no better than that.
Yeah, no lie. Now I've lost my phone before, and it's been in my back pocket. I've never been looking for my phone as I'm on my phone. That's a first.
Once again, I'm just glad to know that you're human.
Yeah. I had to get that out there because if not, then Bobby will
Talk
get it
to
out
Wesley
there.
and
He'll get it out there. So I just went ahead and headed that off. So, it's a self-confession. So
were you actually talking at the same time?
I was definitely talking on the phone. Yeah. Talking on the phone, looking for my phone. Man, unbelievable.
It's a little different if you listen to voicemails or something. But
Yeah,
you were
right.
actually in
I was
discussion.
actually talking, yeah.
In the studio.
Talk about being distracted. All right, folks, I found my phone because I was
Here
on
we go.
it. Yep. All right, Proverbs chapter 25 is where we are this week. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat, and if he is thirsty, give him water to drink, for you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. This is one of those instances throughout Scripture where the human way and the fleshly way and the sinful way is in conflict with God's way of showing restraint, showing self-control, and showing mercy. You're not going to hear this from the world, from worldly teachings. God's precepts and God's desires for how we conduct ourselves are counter to what the world says. A world full of sin, vengefulness, and all of the desires to have what others have and to see your enemy defeated and punished. All of that runs counter to Scripture. All right, that's Proverbs chapter 25, verses 21 and 22. One more thing before we jump in to our in-studio guest is we are taking listener testimonies this week for our upcoming share-a-thon. So if you've been blessed by American Family Radio, we want you to call in and give us about a minute or two of your testimony, of your story. 877-876-8893. That's 877-876-8893. And I'll mention that one more time before we wrap up the program. MD Perkins is with us. He's a producer, director with American Family Studios. He's overseen multiple projects, including our latest, which is Don Wildmon and the Battle for Decency, Culture Warrior. Don Wildmon and the Battle for Decency, that is, culturewarrior.movies, where you can find out that information. But also, MD does a lot of writing, a lot of research. He's actually working on a couple books, and he's written a book previously. And MD, one thing that you've focused in on, not just the culture war or, how we got to where we are in 2025, but marriage and family is something you've looked into as you've studied the LGBTQ issue. You brought to my attention this Wall Street Journal piece talking about marriage policy, divorce policy in Kentucky, and how it's really had an effect on the divorce rate unexpectedly. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, this is a fascinating article by Rachel Wolf for the Wall Street Journal, as you mentioned. Basically, the setup for this is that in divorce law within the state of Kentucky, they have implemented what they call an equal shared parenting act, I guess is what it is, which basically means that the court begins at understanding that both parents have a right to parent the child and equal responsibility in parenting and all of the oversight of the child. And so that's the initial posture of the court. Mm-hmm. And so with this, of course, has been a number of things have happened as a result of this case, but one of the most fascinating side effects is that the divorce rate in Kentucky has actually declined well above what the national average is. The national average, apparently, divorce has been declining nationwide, apparently. Yes. And so this, at something like 18%, I think is what the article said. But in Kentucky, the divorce rate has declined by 25% as a result of this law, because of the way that it's implemented. It means that parents are more inclined potentially to reconcile, or at least to work out some differences, maybe continue on in the relationship for the well-being of the child, because it's not as easy as just getting out the door and getting a huge, child child support check,
sure,
or something like that.
Yeah, and to your point, MD, and to help folks who aren't in this space, haven't been in this space, don't know the divorce arena legally, the go-to default position of the courts in the vast majority of jurisdictions is the mom gets primary custody, if you will, for lack of a better word, which is technically the legal word, but it's I don't like talking about kids as if they're like vehicles and assets. Right. But primary parental authority, parental time, parental rights, I guess is a better word. And so moms typically get there are some rare exceptions if there's substance abuse, child abuse, unstable environment where the moms actually don't get full custody or 80% custody. But what the different approach here that you're pointing out, MD, is that the default position, according to the law in Kentucky now, is a 50-50 split. Meaning, if a mom initiates a divorce, if a mother files for divorce, she's got to file understanding that I'm going to lose on default 50% of my time with my children. Is what's happening here, and then 50% of all responsibilities are equally split. That's a big deal because parents, they think through this. Parents think through, most of them, what's going to happen if I file for divorce. What are the implications? Yeah. And when moms think that they get to retain, 80 to 90% of their time with their children, and dad's going to miss out except for every other weekend. That's not an incentive to make it work, right? Yeah. It is for the father, but it's not for the mother. And so this 50-50 default split in time and responsibilities, not only does it make sense because parenting is a joint partnership, it's a joint relationship and responsibility, but this could be kind of a recipe to help fend off whatever we can these high divorce rates.
Yeah, that's why the article kind of jumped out to me. In one sense, it's honoring fatherhood and recognizing the intrinsic value that fathers bring to the parenting relationship with the child, that is not all on the mother, that the fathers are important. And so recognizing that, but also just this unintended consequence and side effect of a plummeting divorce rate. For all the reasons that you mentioned. And, when I looked a little bit more into this National Parent Organization, which they referenced in the article, apparently only about 6 states, they do a survey of the states and, weighing out what kind of legislation do they currently have. But only 6 states graded an A minus, A plus on these points, and most of the states were either in the C category or D minus, and a couple of states, New York and Rhode Island, scored an F in these things. But West Virginia, Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, Missouri, and Arkansas were all considered to have very strong equal shared parenting legislation on the books.
Yeah. MD, one thing, and this is a little bit off, it's not off topic, but it's a little bit kind of on the side, a side issue that we weren't planning to talk about. But the unfortunate nature of the marital court system, the kind of the custody disputes and all this that takes place in court with judges and lawyers, etc. In my experience, knowing people who've been through divorce, the system, meaning the judges, etc., and the law, don't really care who's at fault. It takes this kind of agnostic, quote, unbiased approach at just slapping this kind of template on every situation where, hey, mom gets the kids all the time except for every other weekend, and then y'all can rotate holidays. I mean, that's pretty much, these judges just throw that out there regardless of the circumstance. And what I think needs to happen, and I think there was some of this in the early century, let's say first century of our country, there was more a more judicious way to go about this than it is. Right now, it's like a cookie cutter, copy and paste system, which is completely broken. But I don't know why judges don't look at the situation by situation for example, if the dad commits adultery and files for divorce because he's being unfaithful, then that needs to be handled a little bit differently than when the mom is the one being unfaithful and she's the one wanting out of the whole relationship and the parenting. And so it just seems like the system needs to be more a la carte and judicious and righteous as opposed to this cookie cutter way of doing things.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. And you know, in the article itself, it brings up some other concerns that people have, you know, in abuse cases and, you know, domestic abuse and things like that, and kids potentially being given 50% time with an abusive parent. And of course, you know, I mean, those are serious situations, but the default position of the court doesn't mean that they are not supposed to judge according to the actual facts of the circumstance. What you're getting at is maybe there's too much, there's not enough time that's being given by the judges to actually assess the individual particulars of the situation. And it was interesting, there was a quote by a Kentucky family court judge named Micah Wood Pence, who said, "You can't set up laws for all families based on the worst circumstances." And so kind of countering this notion that, yeah, I mean, there's bad situations. Of course, a divorce case is already a bad situation.
Correct.
This is not the ideal situation. We don't want people to be in a situation where they're in divorce court and having to talk about custody of the children. So it's already like a diminished from what the ideal is. But it should be a little more judicious. It should be more fair. It should recognize the value that fathers bring. And if the benefit to society is a lowering of divorce rates overall, then this should be assessed by all states, really.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
this is something that could actually potentially strengthen families. It doesn't mean that there aren't issues within families, but you know, at least a willingness to work through some of those issues for the sake of the children, as used to be in generations prior.
Absolutely. And to your point earlier, the reality is that children need mom and dad. Regardless of whether we think, you know, dad's, you know, a knucklehead who can't get his act together and whatever, or you think mom's, you know, situation's messed up, she's done things wrong. As far as the child's needs, that's what should be a majority weighing factor here, which is what Kentucky's law is intended to do. It's not to say that all things are equal as far as a moral standpoint, or that you know, both parties in the divorce are equally responsible for the divorce, but it's focused on what the kids need. And the reality is that kids need the mom and the dad. And even if they're not married, kids need the mom and the dad. And when you take a child-centric approach, which is hopefully how we can continue shaping these conversations, you end up with policies like this and some promising results as well.
Yeah, I found it encouraging.
Absolutely. All right, MD Perkins with American Family Studios, afs.net or .org?
.net, I think.
.net. We'll check that out. You can read some of MD's writings over at afa.net as well. But a lot of good work there at American Family Studios, and some writings as well that you can check out on our blog site and our magazine over at afa.net. MD, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we'll link to that Wall Street Journal piece on the show notes on the podcast page. We'll be back in a few.
You may not put a foreigner over yourselves who is not your countryman. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Representative Delia Ramirez of Illinois is an open borders Democrat who sits on the House of Representatives Border Security and Enforcement Subcommittee. That wouldn't be a big deal in and of itself, except that she recently made an appearance at the Second Pan American Congress, during which she said, in Spanish of course, "I am Guatemalan with much pride before I'm American." My wife helped me with the specific translation. How long can a nation survive when the people elected to serve the nation publicly express loyalty to other nations? There's a reason God prohibited Israel from having foreigners as kings.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
Without even seeing them show up, I could feel like the darkness.
Jamie Sanchez is another Christian business proprietor who has been targeted for his faith. His Drip Cafe was opened to serve and help the homeless of downtown Denver.
We believe sex outside of marriage and homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes. And the enemy and his minions decided to use that as a platform.
Jesus told us persecution would come.
I would see them, just the rage and the hate. I pictured them doing that at the foot of the cross to Jesus. And I just remembered what he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And so I had to position my heart that way.
The Jamie Sanchez story is one of the videos of the Impact series at stream.afa.net.
It's been a crazy, crazy ride.
See Jamie's story and much more at stream.afa.net.
Have you ever wanted to take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee? Raise your hand. Yeah, but in order to do that, you have to actually go to the Sea of Galilee. Hello, this is Tim Wildmon, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We are going to Israel and to the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, where we'll have a baptismal service. We're going to the Dead Sea. We're going to Jerusalem and Bethlehem and Nazareth. A lot of the places you've read about in the Bible your whole life, we're going to be seeing on our annual trip of Israel, the Holy Land. If you want more information on our tour, go to wildmongroup.com, WILDMON group.com. We also have information there about the Footsteps of Paul Greece tour. That's back-to-back with the Israel tour, so it's also in March of 2026. We look forward to seeing you on one of our tours.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildman. Glad to have you back with us this segment. The website I was trying to give out, didn't have it in front of me, to check out some of MD's work over at American Family Studios is AmericanFamilyStudios.net. AmericanFamilyStudios.net. You can check out some of the video resources there at AmericanFamilyStudios.net. And if you go over to AFA.net and check out our blog site and our magazine, you can search by author and look for MD or Michael Perkins and read some of his work. So very interesting discussion and report out of Kentucky on the declining divorce rate due to, in part, the change of how they handle custody disputes. So very interesting topic. We'll continue to track that as it relates directly to our core values and our work here at AFA. All right, Kendra Arnold is with us. Kendra is Executive Director at the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, otherwise known as FACT. Kendra Arnold is with us now. Kendra, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, Kendra, I cover broadly the topic of conflicts of interest and ethics when it comes to government officials. I've talked pretty extensively about the insider trading problem in Congress, which is a very publicly known problem. A lot of the information is publicly available as far as the different congressmen and congresswomen that trade very suspiciously. Let's just put it that way. But the problem of ethics is throughout government. And so tell us a little bit about your organization and what you guys focus on, and then maybe we'll jump into some specific cases.
Sure. Our organization is focused on government ethics. So almost exactly what you just spoke about. And what we do is we monitor elected officials and candidates, and we make sure that they are complying with the ethics laws and federal law generally. So when we see an issue come up, some of the broad areas that we work in is our federal Congress, sometimes governors at the state level, but generally these positions will monitor them. And if we see something that appears to be an ethics violation, we will file a complaint with the oversight body, whether it's the Federal Election Commission or the Office of Congressional Ethics. And one of the things that I think is very interesting that most people do not realize is that without organizations like ours, these issues simply don't get brought up to the oversight bodies. So we see the Federal Election Commission and we think that they're monitoring our elections and all these campaigns going on. But in reality, that is not the case. They generally will review a candidate's filings and looking for clerical errors or things that jump out at them, but they won't monitor the different events that they're having or who precisely is giving to their campaigns or things like that. And so without us filing a complaint, those issues are never brought before the FEC. And the same is with our congressional oversight bodies as well, and several throughout the government.
So when I read up on this issue of ethics and conflicts of interest and corruption for public officials, it seems like a pretty widespread issue, at least on the surface. So is this issue of ethical violations, conflicts of interest, and public corruption for officials, which I'm bundling all those together, some of them criminal, some of them not, is this as widespread of a problem as I think it is, or not necessarily?
I think it probably is as widespread as you think it is. And partly because there's two different levels here. One is we actually have ethics rules that are very widespread. And so what those do is they target officials' behavior to make sure that everything that they're doing appears appropriate. So it's not just that they are doing something illegal. It's that the actions that they're taking on their daily basis while they're in office makes it look like they're not doing something illegal. So we're often looking at things that we say, well, this appears to be an impropriety. And under the ethics laws, that is a violation. So we have it all the way to that end. And then we also have on the other end the criminal laws. So, and that's things like taking a bribe, where someone might get paid money in order to introduce legislation or something along those lines, where we know that's wrong and we can see that in our criminal statutes. But again, that can be all the way over to the other side of having some sort of business relationship that looks suspect, that we don't necessarily know if there's a bribe going on, but it looks wrong on the other end. So it's partly because we have such wide-ranging rules that really are there to promote our democracy. Without them, our government essentially fails. It is founded on the people's confidence in our elected officials and the confidence in our government being fair and impartial and working for all the people.
The topic of, once again, we're talking to Kendra Arnold she's the executive director over at the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. Kendra, the topic of insider trading has been going on for a long time, and there's dozens, if not hundreds, of members of Congress that are accused of this. And it seems so blatant. It seems so simple, kind of in your face when you look at the timing of trades from congressmen and congresswomen, which most of this is publicly available information through disclosures. Is there insider trading going on that's just the Department of Justice just isn't interested in pursuing it? Or are they using loopholes? Are these lawmakers using loopholes that are not technically insider trading, but it's in essence insider trading, not from a legal sense, but from a practical sense? What's going on there?
Right. I think, in all honesty, I don't think that we can 100% know the level of illegal activity, but in a way I would say both. Because on one hand, Congress gets, let me back up and say this. So they do make disclosures on their stock trades. So they are supposed to file within 30 or 45 days every single stock trade that they do. Now, one of the issues that we have been working on for a very long time is the fact that they simply don't. They do not comply with this law. There are hundreds, probably thousands of examples where they don't. And we regularly file complaints here. And so what they do is they'll file it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years later and say, oh yeah, I traded this stock. Well, that makes it impossible for us to go back 10 years ago and say, what were they doing? What was on a commit? They were on a committee. What was that committee looking at the time? Was it related to their stock trades? I mean, some of that is very difficult to piece together, and some of it you would never know. Who were they meeting with? What was going on? What was Congress being briefed on at the time? So when you get so far out, it's really difficult to tell whether it just appears bad or whether it actually there was insider trading. And two, those laws are not enforced because the penalty is so small. It's the first offense is basically free. Then it's a $200 fine. And when you're making thousands of dollars on a stock trade, a $200 fine will not deter you. And then it's also members enforcing these laws against other members. So we have not the hugest desire from our Congress members to punish their fellow friends and colleagues. They just aren't really driven to do that. So for all those reasons, those laws are not necessarily being enforced well or operating, achieving their goal. And so when we see that, we can't really say, is this criminal activity here, or is it something that just kind of looks bad? And I will say there is somewhat of a loophole too, because on one end, we'll see Congress being maybe briefed about issues that the rest of the country does not know about. And one of the examples we've heard of recently is, for example, Congress was briefed about COVID before the entire nation knew about it. Now, at that point, they could make stock trades and they could do things, and it necessarily wouldn't be insider trading. And nobody has gone back and looked at all of their stock trades from that period of time and said, oh, this is wrong. They had information that the American public does. And I think most people that would not be followed up by the Justice Department as insider trading. Mm-hmm. That's just them kind of using a loophole.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest, once again, we're talking to Kendra Arnold with the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. To be honest, I'm a little bit skeptical of the whole insider trading statute to begin with, only because of it's very difficult, to your point, to enforce. I mean, technically, a member of Congress can know about something that the public doesn't know about, and then all they do is wait until 60 seconds after the CNN piece is published, and then they go, and then they make the transaction, and they go, well, I read it on CNN. And technically they did, but also they knew about it before. So they were sitting there watching the CNN homepage, waiting on the article to be published that they orchestrated. So it just gets very, very dicey and very difficult to enforce, which is probably why the DOJ doesn't really pursue this very often, unless it's blatant. But if you and I do... Yeah, if what I was going to say, and then I get your thoughts. If you and I do it, though, the problem I have is when the law is not applied equally. If you and I were to do textbook insider trading, then we're going to be busted on it. And so as long as we're applying these things equally, I'm okay with it.
True. And I think the application equally isn't somewhat impossible to do, though, because these Congress members, well, first of all, in order to find them guilty of insider trading, you would have to know that they traded this stock and then go back and figure out what they knew when they knew it. Nobody is in that position to really do that. I mean, the Justice Department would have to have a reason to say, we're going to investigate this particular stock trade because we think they might have been informed about the committee helping this one company, or, this company benefiting for information that this committee is some action they're going to do. Well, to put that together retroactively is nearly impossible with every member of Congress, because we would have to know exactly what they were doing when the committee was doing it and line that up with a stock trade or other actions that Congress is briefed on. And the Justice Department doesn't always have that information. Yeah. So basically, something has to tip them off, has to alert the Justice Department to the insider trading, to have them go back then and do an investigation and see what they possibly could have known at the time. And that's really difficult with so many members of Congress making so many trades. It would be, it would take a huge workforce to monitor every single trade they did. And so I think that's part of the reason why it's not enforced at times when we look at things and we think this is bad. it's simply because, it's a hard case to prove, and there's so much information out there and so many trades happening to monitor all of them is very, very difficult.
Yeah, you're right. It is, and to your point, there's loopholes they're using. I know they are. These lawmakers are not going into this naive and unprepped. I mean, there's advice given on how to go about de facto insider trading without being guilty of it, and that's what they're doing. Whether it's through, hallway conversations with family members that are doing the trades for them. However they're going about it, they've figured out the loopholes, and clearly the Department of Justice isn't interested in going down this rabbit hole. Before we go, we've got about 2 minutes left. What's the most kind of blatant public corruption ethics violation that you guys have been working on recently, as far as different agencies, different positions in government? What's kind of the big thing that you guys have been focused on?
Oh gosh, we do so much. So one of the things that we have been focused on is the stock trading with Congress, and we've been monitoring a lot of the filings with that. Other areas that we look at is the Congress's use of official resources to do campaign activity. That comes up quite often. So we'll see a House member or a senator use their office in some way, shape, or form to essentially campaign, and whether it's setting up events or using the official social media or doing different things with their staff. That's another way that they can do that, is use official resources to campaign. So we see that quite often, especially during before elections and the year leading up to that. We do a lot of work with super PACs and different organizations. We've had cases where we filed complaints, and it has been referred to the Justice Department, and someone has been found guilty of operating a scam PAC. So we do a lot of monitoring with that too, because there's a lot of individuals out there who start PACs that are not necessarily related to the individual that you think it is, or even doing any work at all politically. So we always urge everyone to be very careful with your dollars and make sure that you know who you're giving them to. So that's another thing that we see come up often.
Absolutely. Hey, Kendra, give our folks your URL real quick so they can read more about your work.
Absolutely. factdc.org. That's FACTDC.org. And we post all of our complaints up there, and you can read about all of our work.
Excellent. Absolutely. Hey, Kendra, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Happy to be on. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kendra. That's Kendra Arnold, Executive Director at the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. Boy, do we need them. And what I love is their work's all public. So every time they file a report, send a criminal referral, or file a criminal complaint rather, they are publishing that information and what they found on their website. Somebody has to be looking over the shoulders of government officials for the sake of transparency. Well, there you have it, folks. We got one segment left, a lot of topics left to talk about. Check out our website, afr.net, to listen live to the program. You can watch the show over on Facebook and stream.afa.net. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
When you hear this is American Family News. You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net, and sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
In today's society, the traditional values of marriage and the family unit face increasing scrutiny and reinterpretation. Join us as a courageous group of speakers and leaders rise up to defend these foundational institutions from a biblical perspective. For more information and to reserve your spot, visit us at scs.edu/national-conference. the Steadfast National Conference on Christian Apologetics and Evangelism, where faith meets reason, culture, and community.
Jesus' final words to his disciples were to go into all the world and teach the gospel, making disciples of all nations. For more than 27 years, Tomorrow Clubs International has faithfully answered that call by partnering with local churches in some of the world's poorest nations. Here's a report from a team leader.
When children learn to follow Jesus, they become disciple makers, influencing their families and friends. The gospel then overflows into the community, bringing repentance, reconciliation, church growth, and even reduction in crime and substance abuse.
More than 500,000 children have learned to follow Jesus through Tomorrow Clubs. Kids also learn practical life skills such as cooking, woodworking, and the English language, preparing them for a brighter future. To learn more about the life-changing work of Tomorrow Clubs International, go to tomorrowclubs.org. That's tomorrowclubs.org. All gifts are tax deductible.
We've been talking these last 2 days about a study of very strong-willed and very compliant kids from 35,000 families.
Here's today's Dr. Dobson Minute with Dr. James Dobson.
The strong-willed child seems compelled from within to fuss, fight, test, question, resist, and challenge. Why is he or she like that? It's difficult to know, except to say that the basic temperament appears to be inherited. Now, there are a couple of other things that moms and dads might find helpful. First, raising an especially strong-willed child, or a house full of them, can be a very lonely job for parents. Second, I hope you'll resist the inclination to feel cheated or depressed by the responsibility of raising a tough-minded kid. Yes, it is more difficult to raise an independent little fellow or gal, but you can do it. All it takes is a consistent application of love and discipline for about 18 years.
For more information, visit drdobsonminute.org.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildman. Glad to have you with us for this last segment of the program. Well, as I mentioned in the first segment, if you were listening, we are taking listener testimonies, listener stories right now for the rest of this week, and we would love to hear from you. If you've been impacted by American Family Radio, if you enjoy American Family Radio, if God has used AFR in your life, you can simply call us, share about a minute or two worth of time and testimony there by leaving a voicemail at 877-876-8893, 877-876-8893. We would love to hear from you. And possibly you could hear your own story, your own testimony during our Fall Share-a-thon coming up in October. So call in 877-876-8893. We would love to hear from you to get your listener testimony on how AFR has impacted your life. All right, let's jump through a lot of stories this segment, play a couple clips here. The Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement conducted a raid, a pretty massive raid over in Georgia, on a Hyundai facility that was being built it was being built for the purpose of producing batteries for electric vehicles. This was a multi-million, probably multi-billion-dollar project over at Hyundai in Georgia. And the Department of Homeland Security got a tip that there were hundreds of illegal immigrants working at this facility, which is shocking to hear the level of illegality going on in broad daylight at a major multi-billion-dollar manufacturing facility being built in Georgia. So let's listen to President Trump on what happened in Georgia with the Department of Homeland Security conducting this raid.
Auto manufacturer Hyundai is pushing out the subsidiary that oversaw a manufacturing plant where 475 illegal immigrants were arrested this week. Hyundai telling Fox that it will take full control of the mega site. Madison Scarpino is live in Ellabelle, Georgia with more. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Mike. This was ICE's largest raid at a single site in history, and it comes after a deep investigation into illegal workers here. So Hyundai is telling Fox that they want to make sure everyone at this mega site, the different companies, the subcontractors, are all following the law. Now, Hyundai says that no illegal immigrant arrested directly worked for the motor company, but we do know the majority of the 475 people arrested are South Korean. It comes as tensions over trade are already high between the U.S. and South Korea. The foreign ministry there is not happy about this raid, saying they're very concerned. But President Trump says ICE is just doing its job.
We want to get along with other countries, and we want to have a great, stable workforce. And we had, as I understand it, a lot of illegal aliens, some not the best of people, but we had a lot of illegal aliens working there.
This massive raid put a stop to construction of a factory where Hyundai partnered with LG Energy Solution to make electric vehicle batteries. So a massive project there coming to a halt. It was chaos, law enforcement cars everywhere, and some workers were reportedly trying to flee. Georgia's governor has long touted this mega site and its role in the state's economy, but state Democrats are now saying this raid is ruining families, business, and the community. Now, officials have not yet charged any of these illegal immigrants with a crime, but we did talk to an attorney for two of the people detained who says that his clients are in this country legally. Mike?
We'll get it sorted out.
Oh, my. So this happened in Georgia. And here's what's infuriating about this. Some of these companies, in this case Hyundai, and their subsidiaries, they tried to act, oh, this wasn't us. Yes, it was. It was your subcontractors. You can't wipe your hands clean of this. Bobby, what they're doing in some instances, not all, is they're coming into a community and saying, we're going to build this facility and give us all these tax credits, give us all these cuts, give us all these tax breaks, and we'll employ your community, right? We'll add hundreds of jobs for hardworking Americans.
Yeah, and that's the point right there. Yeah. 450, 475 people. There's a lot of people in Georgia who I think can be trained to put together batteries.
Yes.
That are local, American citizens. This is part and parcel of underhandedness on the part of South Korea. There's no other way you can look at it that.
Yeah, exactly right. So this, folks, this is where the immigration system isn't working. I mean, it's just a fact. These companies claim to want to come in and invest in America, and then they get over here and they don't even employ Americans.
Or use HB1 visas, right?
Right, exactly. So this is a problem, all right? This is a problem. We're giving these multi-billion-dollar companies tax breaks, which, whatever. If you want to incentivize business to come in, I get it, okay? But it has to benefit Americans. And right here, there were no Americans hired. It was all foreigners. And I almost guarantee you they're not paying taxes. They're not paying taxes. They're on temporary work visas. And some of them were all of them were expired. They were either illegal immigrants or they were here expired. Their visas were expired. So this is a big scandal. And this is the skepticism about our immigration system. Even our legal immigration system, we're the most generous in the world, over 1 million legal immigrants a year. And here we have this Hyundai, a major car manufacturer out of South Korea, sending in roughly 500 workers that are all illegals and no Americans hired here. So that's a major problem. The other thing I wanted to mention is to follow up. Well, let's talk about artificial intelligence. This kind of dovetails into this story as far as major corporations not putting the interest of the American people first. The AI threat to American jobs is to be determined. How this is going to play out, what timeline it's going to play out. Are people being replaced now by AI? I'm not really sure. I think it's probably going to take longer than the experts say. I mean, people like Elon Musk are like, oh, in 2 years, 30% of American workers will be replaced. I don't think it's going to be that fast because humans don't adapt to change that quickly. But nonetheless, artificial intelligence has been given this almost free reign and this unregulation, lack of regulation, in the name of innovation and capitalism and AI and America becoming AI dominant. And I understand why we want to be AI dominant, because artificial intelligence needs to dwell within America and within the homeland here so we can place Western ideals on it. So I understand why we don't want AI to be hosted in China, to be hosted in North Korea or Russia, etc. We want it to be in America so we can apply Western values to the program, to the system, to the technology. But right now, these major tech companies are moving full force ahead with hardly any moral reasoning or any moral weight on the development of the technology. Let's listen to Senator Josh Hawley warning us.
All I can tell you is that the tech people who are spending literally, when I say $1 billion, I'm not kidding. I mean, they're spending cumulatively billions of dollars on these new wellness regimens. They think that they can extend their lifespan into the far horizon. But here's the bottom line. Whatever the truth is in that, they are using artificial intelligence to further their ideology. And that's what matters for us, Steve. That's what matters to this country and for working people. They're going out there and they're turning AI into a weapon to help the oligarchs and to hurt the working man. We cannot allow that to happen. Right now, AI is turning into a tool of the rich and powerful to extend their control over this country. We got to stop that. There'll be no jobs left for working people if this goes on, if we don't put guardrails up, and if we don't make this technology serve working people rather than the other way around.
This is the moral dilemma that I've alluded to before. And I don't know what the perfect fix is here. And I don't think it's realistic. I've heard Tucker Carlson say he just wants to kill AI. He just wants to bury AI and put it in the history books and just not even utilize it or deploy it. I don't think that's practically a reality or an option. I think AI has too many advantages and opportunities to just be sidelined and ditched as a technology. But to the contrary, and on the opposite side of that, I think it has to have guardrails. And right now, in the name of competition, or rather, in the name of innovation, we haven't placed hardly any guardrails on this. Artificial intelligence, I'm talking about. And I think that's problematic. I think long-term, we're going to regret that. Because you've got multiple things going on here. The first and foremost issue that I see is the human issue. The issue of replacing human jobs. And this technocracy that we're leaning into, folks, I'm not sure it's as great as they say it is. I'm not sure it's as great as they say it is. And so this is something that we need to have public discourse about. You can come in, Fred. We need to have public discourse about AI and the morals of AI, and not act as if this is some amoral subject. You can come over here, Fred. I think we got a breaking story out of Utah Valley University. Fred Jackson's our news director, American Family News, AFN.net. They'll have something out on this pretty shortly. But Fred, let's see. I think you're hot. You're good to go. What you got going on?
Fox News is reporting at this hour that Charlie Kirk, the head of Turning Point, has been shot at during a speech at Utah Valley University.
Wow.
We don't know much more than that right now. He was speaking there. Of course, he's been in the news a lot, commenting on what's been going on in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Talking about the LGBTQ agenda, all of those sorts of things.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm looking at videos now on X.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. This was hundreds of people present. That's hard to watch.
Yeah, and now we want to be guarded in our comments at this point because we don't know whether somebody reported that Jason Chavez, who has been a member of the House, he is reporting at this hour he heard the shot.
Yeah.
We do not know if Charlie Kirk was injured. We cannot talk about that right now.
Right.
We just don't have those kinds of details.
Okay.
All
So
right.
what we can say is that there was reported gunfire at an event that Charlie Kirk was at on a college campus. Which
That's right.
He hosts these events all the time.
Yes.
Where he does these dialogues, these conversations with young people about capitalism, Marxism, freedom.
Yes. Very high profile.
Yeah.
Very. And he's been criticized for the comments that he's made about the Charlotte shooting as well. other networks. So, I mean, he's a target for a lot of very sick people out there.
Well, Fred, this opens, and we'll just leave you on the rest of the segment. We got a couple minutes left. This opens the door. I mean, this opens the door to discussing the topic of the radicalization of young people in our country.
Yes.
And we had the school shooter, the Catholic. There's been dozens of these now, but the most recent one in Minnesota.
Yes.
At the Catholic school there, young person radicalized, mostly online by the LGBTQ ideology and other ideologies. And we had the one in Nashville.
Yep.
Both of these individuals identify as transgender.
Yes.
And then there's a lot of these that go unreported in the mainstream, but the list is growing, is my point.
Yes.
As a percentage of population, transgender individuals are becoming more and more responsible for some of these mass shootings.
Yes. Well, and it's just, and there's so many factors that are going into this, but basically, when you have the mainstream media, which likes to highlight any kind of attack on a leftist, but either doesn't report on or almost celebrates when somebody with a conservative point of view is attacked, and they almost say, hey, she deserved it because of the point of view that they have.
Which is sick. Yeah.
It's sick, but it's been endorsed for so many years in our university system.
Yeah.
That
it's justified. That violence is justified if what you're being violent against is, in your viewpoint, wrong or evil.
Yeah. That the left portrays itself as being the victim of something.
And on a righteous mission to squash.
And when young people hear that over and over and over again,
threat to democracy,
all of those sorts of things, then in their minds they start to justify these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like I said, we don't know all the details yet, but we do know that a shot was fired at an event where Charlie Kirk was speaking.
Yeah.
We will keep you up to date, folks, this afternoon.
Yeah, we will. I'm just looking what's on X and some of the video. It's just not very good. But we'll continue to follow it and keep folks updated. You'll hear the news at the top of the hour, and then go over to afn.net. Not a lot of details right now, but as the next hour goes on, we'll try to get some stuff published there when we learn more. That's Fred Jackson. Charlie Kirk reportedly shot on a college campus in Utah while speaking at an event with hundreds of college students, it looks like. Wow. Dangerous times that we live in. And folks, this shows the radicalization of left-wing Marxist-leaning voters is a real thing. And you compile all the propaganda that we've been hearing, even after President Trump was shot, people trying to justify it. It's not a shock that this stuff happens. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily